So thanks again, and we move on with our next speaker. I started with talking about security. I started speaking about how secure are we physically, but what about how secure are we online? How secure are we digital? Are we free in the digital world? So from that perspective, I would like to welcome now on the stage a good friend of mine and somebody who just announced a new service a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be happy to hear more about it. I would like to invite here Samu from F-Secure. Please join me on the stage. All the way from Helsinki. So, tell me about your personal fears. How was it? Did you feel a bit threatened at the airports? And what was the internal guts feeling that you had? I mean, do you travel with ease now these days?
I think, Plamen, that's a really good question. So I travel massively, so between 100 to 150 days a year. And when you hear about the events like happened in Paris and all that stuff, it just makes you think. But I fully second what you said in your opening keynote. So we shouldn't let the terrorists achieve their goal, which means that we stop living our lives, we become fearful of everything, and then the planet just stops. So we can't do that. I'm not doing that. So I'll continue rolling as ever before.
Thank you so much. Here you are. This is the clicker, and let's see how secure are we online, because
exactly.
At least this is something that you can be in charge with.
A little bit, yeah.
Rock
Thanks,
the stage,
Plamen.
Thank you very much.
Good. So hey, happy to be here. So as Plamen kindly introduced, my name is Samu Konttinen from F-Secure. I've been with F-Secure about 11 years, so a bit of background in the cybersecurity industry. F-Secure is one of the really old, almost a dinosaur company in this industry. We've been in the antivirus cybersecurity industry practically as long as the industry has existed, so 27 years to date. What I'll be talking about, the clicker don't work, so.
I'll try with this one.
Yeah, you have a better one. Yeah, so I'll be talking about a little bit like on the threats out there, and in order to understand the threats, you really need to understand where they are coming from. And to start off, so let's really look at the different interest groups out there. They have different motivations, different tools, different thinking, and to really protect yourself, you really need to understand these different angles. So the first one almost shouldn't be on this slide, because these guys are like white hackers. These are good guys. These two gentlemen are the guys who hacked into the Jeep about 6 months ago. I'm sure you read about that in the news, how you can hijack a car when it's driving and start controlling some bits and pieces of the car. But these guys are for good. They are hacking into things not to break anything, not to cause damage, but they want to have a better world. And they informed Chrysler about the vulnerabilities that Jeep has, and they told Chrysler that we're going to be going out with our information in 6 months at the Black Hat conference, so you have 6 months time to fix it. That's how these guys typically work. Walacek and Miller are the names of the guys. Very, very interesting. These guys today work with Uber. This is where it gets a bit more interesting. So this interest group is something that I would call hacktivists. They have a cause. They are driving their cause. We saw from the news couple of days now that the anonymous group, they declared war against ISIS. So they are driven with a cause. It's very, very cause-driven thinking. And then this is the one in the middle. This is the business as usual threat. These are the cyber criminals. And if you look at what is the volume out there that companies like F-Secure and some of our good competitors, what is it that we are facing? So on an average day, like today, we are countering about 300,000 malware samples. 300,000 new malware samples on an average day. And why these people are very different compared to their previous group, the hacktivists, they don't have a cause. They go for money. And they don't care whether the money comes from you or from you or from you. They just want money. They try to find wherever they find the easiest targets. So that really is like what the consumers and the companies would need to be thinking of, like, don't be an easy target, because these guys always gravitate wherever is the easiest target. And this is where it gets even more interesting than with the quote-unquote normal cyber criminals. This is the governments. And this is a very new phenomenon that has gotten a lot of publicity since Edward Snowden came out. It's more and more common that we run into cases where there are cyber attack tools that you would call viruses, things that are developed to penetrate a company. But these tools are no longer developed by the cyber criminals to get money. More and more we see that these cyber attack tools are being developed by governments. And why this is very interesting and difficult. And I don't want to go and say that the governments are doing something wrong. I mean, we've all seen the James Bond movies. In the good old times, you go and you send the James Bond, and then he will get some intelligence, some information. Today, everything is digital. But the problem is that the governments have massive resources to develop these cyber attack tools, but the tools don't stay in their hand. That is the problem. So you pour in a lot of money, a lot of resources, and then the tools end up to the hands of these guys. You can take the analogy like many big nations, they have their nuclear arsenals. They have the nuclear weapons. And probably they have that for a very good reason. But you can now start thinking, what would it happen if these nuclear weapons would immediately also end up into the hands of the criminals? And this is now the dangerous part. These are the extremists. These are a little bit like the hacktivists, so they have a cause. They are not money-driven. The government, they are not money-driven either. They want information. These extremists, they do whatever it takes to drive their things. These are the terrorists. And now one thing in common with all these 5 interest groups is that it is very a multi-layered ecosystem behind the scenes. So often it is one person or group of people or a underground company who develops these tools. Then it might be a different people or different interest groups who actually go and use the tools so that they try to get as many PCs infected as possible. And then it would be the third group who is actually then starts using the infected people for PCs for their use. So it's really multi-layered. It could be a young, really brilliant guy in India who writes the code, and then he sells the code to somebody else, and then this somebody else sends the code out, it penetrates to millions of PCs, and then he sells that to a third company who now starts to utilize that botnet. So it's a really much of a multi-layered ecosystem, if you like. So that's what the kind of the cyber threat, the world landscape looks like. So it's really important that you understand the enemy. There are 5 different interest groups. They all are driven with different motivation. And what I'm really trying to say is that despite all that, so don't mess with the internet. I think the internet is just brilliant. And I really wouldn't want to see that the whole beautiful internet that helps us to stay connected so that we can share starts to collapse because there's so much problems. And this leads to my next topic about privacy. So I think the cyber world is not about viruses and these things anymore. It's more and more about privacy for people. More and more people are starting to get concerned that and understand that once you're online, there's not much privacy. There's always somebody tracking you and profiling you. And the tracking is not only good, only bad. I think there really is two ways to look at it. So if you think about tracking and profiling, so that you would be shown more relevant ads, I think that's good. I rather see ads that are really good and meaningful for me than the ads that mean nothing to me. But obviously advertisers, they can do that only if they can profile me. But then the bad side of the tracking and profiling is that more and more companies, and let me emphasize, these are good companies. I have nothing against these companies. So now I'm a consumer here on stage. So more and more companies are using the profiling for dynamic pricing. And it means simply that you go to your airline website, you check for a flight, and the price is something, say $500. And then you don't buy that immediately. You go to surf some other website to see if there are better deals. And then you return to that first website, and now you think that you're going to buy the flight. But the price is no longer $500. It's now $550. And more people are thinking, how did that happen? These airlines, how can they change pricings all of a sudden? And it's weird, it's strange. But they didn't change the pricing generically. They changed the price for you. And all this is possible only that since the first time you hit the website of that airline, they put tens and tens tracking and profiling hooks on you. And that means that when you went to the other websites and then eventually return, they know this guy was here before. He was checking Istanbul-London flight. Then he went to these other airline web pages, and now he comes back. Let's raise the price a little bit because now the guy is ready to buy. And what we at F-Secure wanted to do, we wanted to create tools that you could be in control with this thing. So that if you want to have anonymity and privacy on the internet, you could say that, I get it. Now I would use some privacy. It's like the curtains. Sometimes it's good to have curtains open. You want to see the birds, the clouds, the mountains. And you understand the curtains are open, the people are also looking you. But sometimes at your home you feel that, hey, now I could use some privacy. I want to put the curtains down. And that is something that we want to provide to people, that you could get privacy online if you want. And this is rather interesting. So if you look at the data, that the tracking is not just that it violates your privacy, but tracking also means that it slows down your web browsing significantly. And now maybe you think, well, how is that possible? It's very simple. You go hit the website. You are not just downloading the content of that website, but you are actually downloading all the tracking and profiling scripts. So you download a lot of stuff that you never meant to download. So in summary, we run a lot of tests that if you start blocking the trackers, the profilers, your browsing speed can go up as much as 89%. These are serious numbers. And I think going forward, what's going to be really the revolution in the digital space for digital freedom, the trust is becoming a new currency. Unfortunately, so many of these online services, be it Ashley Madison or eBay and whatnot, they've been hacked. And you lost your user credentials, your information is gone. And people are getting more and more worried about the fact that who can I trust? And I think that the trust is becoming a new currency in the digital space. And to give some visibility to this whole privacy-related thing, so we've developed a very cool product called F-Secure Freedom, and a couple of weeks back we published a version of it for PCs now. It's going to be shipping on Android and Mac and iOS later this year, but now on PC we developed a tool called Trackermapper. And the picture a little bit illustrates, you see that how it visualizes your surfing. Practically what it does, that once you go to a website, we visualize you, we show you that now, you go to this website and now you see that these are now the trackers that are hooking into you. And then you go to another website, you see that these trackers and profilers, they follow you. And again, I want to emphasize that there's nothing bad with it. So these are good companies. They are trying to optimize and maximize their business. But I think consumers should know. You should understand this. And then if you say that, yes, now that I understand it, I don't want it. I don't want to be profiled. I don't want to be traced. So then you should have a tool that says that, no, thank you. I want my privacy. So this is pretty much the story I had today about the 5 different interest groups that we see out there in cyberspace, and then about the trust being a new currency, so people ought to get their privacy.
Thanks, Samu.
Thank you.
Thanks for your speech. Thank you very much for being here.